this is Karen with My I'm Possible Dream, and this is a pre-recorded show today. I happen to be in Detroit. We're celebrating my mother's 95th birthday for the second time. I guess when you're 95, you can celebrate your birthday as many times as you want. That's part of the impossible dream. Impossible means I'm possible. And let me tell you, my mother is possible. In fact, my mother has 3 children that are very possible. There's myself. I'm the youngest. I have a brother in the middle. His name is Joel, and he's in the music business. And I have a brother who is the oldest. We're not going to say how much older, but he's the oldest. And he sort of has been living his dream for a number of years. And my brother Gary is sitting here with me. And I've asked him to share with you something that he's been doing for a while, because he is Word Man, or is it Scrabble Man? What is it?
Letterman.
Letterman.
But not like the Letterman that just ended his TV career. I'm a different kind of Letterman.
Okay, so explain what kind of Letterman you are.
Well, I became quite interested in the game of Scrabble on a level of competition. That's a lot different than most other people play at home. When you play at home, it's mostly just for fun. And 2 people, 3 people, 5 people sit around the Scrabble board, and a game might take all day or all weekend. I just happened to fall into a place where I observed a competitive Scrabble game, and I was hooked before 10-15 minutes went by, because as I looked on the board and the words that were down there, none of them looked like real words to me. And I was wondering, what language are they playing in? And what I found out very shortly is they were playing with English, but why I didn't know the words is most of us only know 5% of the words in the dictionary.
Only 5%?
That's all.
Wow.
And we don't pay any attention to the other 95%. But as a competitive Scrabble player, you want to learn as many of the 95%, so when you take your turn, you have a greater choice of words to play from, and you might play something that your opponent doesn't know as a word and might challenge you. And if you win a challenge in Scrabble, you get your points plus another immediate turn. Your opponent loses a turn. That turns out to be a very big thing in the game of competitive Scrabble.
So competitive Scrabble, is this a big thing, or is it just a small little group of people that you've met?
Well, when I first started doing this, it was quite a while ago, over 30 years ago. And at the time, there were about 25,000 people across the United States that played competitive Scrabble and affiliated themselves with the National Scrabble Association. Things have changed like everything else changes. And the competitive Scrabble world has gone through its own metamorphosis. It's now divided into 2 groups in the United States, and there are other groups around the world, and there isn't any one group that has thousands and thousands of people like you might find in competitive bridge. There are literally thousands of people across the country. So what I find in competitive Scrabble, it's really a highly select group. That doesn't mean you can't play, but it means that if you want to get in and compete, you have some homework to do to be able to compete and be successful.
So many of us are playing Words with Friends on our phones today. Are we competitive Scrabble players?
What I've observed, my answer would have to be no, hoping not to offend you.
That's okay.
I know hundreds of people that play Words with Friends, but most of them are interested in filling a few seconds or 10 minutes by playing a word and having their friend play back and maybe taking another turn right away. And I haven't met any of the people playing Words with Friends who have tried to master some of those unusual words that I referred to in the other 95%. If you were a Words with Friends player and knew some of those other words, you'd probably win every time.
I understand that. I know that, when I play Words with Friends, it's much easier for me than when I sit down at a Scrabble board. And I think sometimes it's because I can look at it and then I can say, I'm not ready to play this hand right now, and I can close that screen and come back to it. Whereas when I'm playing Scrabble, there's a time limit, and you've got to play it, and otherwise you lose your turn.
And if you're playing someone who is competitive, the game moves along quite quickly. And whatever you're going to do this turn, you have to think ahead, like a chess player when they make a move and they think ahead of what their opponent might play and what you might play, and they might be thinking 3 moves ahead. Same thing with a competitive Scrabble player. I might play a word in a particular part of the board, which creates an opening, hopefully for me, but my opponent might notice it as well and take advantage. But you have to be thinking ahead to be a competitive player.
So there's a lot of thinking process to it. You've got to be somewhat logical in your thinking as well, and it's competitive.
Yeah, and another factor would be to be open to learning new things. A lot of people are not that way.
Right.
People notice our club playing, or they notice me as a player, and they want to play. And the first time I put down a word that they don't know, they'll say, well, what does that mean? Scrabble players don't care what the words mean. We might know the meanings of some or most of the words we play, but the important thing is recognizing the combination of letters in this form as a word, and then playing it for the most points on the board. And the people who insist on knowing what every word means, those people drop out pretty quickly because they're unwilling to play with someone like me dropping new, strange words on them.
Sure.
And they feel that they don't want to invest the time to learn all of that. It's quite a volume.
Wow. So you got interested. So what drew you to the first Scrabble game? Let's go back to that.
Well, as I mentioned, I sort of came upon this group playing Scrabble, and I didn't understand what was on the board. And it really piqued my curiosity. I talked with some of the people at that time. One of them invited me to come to a Scrabble club that he was part of, and it met every Tuesday night, and the meeting place wasn't too far from the place where I lived, and so I started going on Tuesdays. At first, I did not win a game, did not come close to winning a game. Now, here's another thing about new players. Just imagine yourself doing something over and over again and losing or not being successful in winning. Most of those people stop coming.
Sure,
they
absolutely.
quit.
Yeah.
I guess I'm cut out of a different cloth. I was so interested in the game and in the words, and I was trying to see the wheels in their minds going on as they played the game, that I stuck with it. And it took me maybe as long as 3-4 months of every Tuesday till I started getting close to winning a game, and then winning a game here or there. But each time I made a play, or my opponent made a play, I learned a lesson about the game. There's a lot of strategy in terms of where you play, where you don't play. If you're constantly putting the word with a letter out between two triple word scores, and you have an accomplished opponent, they'll play a triple triple, which is 9 times the value of the word, and if they use all 7 letters, they'll get an extra 50-point bonus. So when I tell a new player that they can score maybe 150, 200 points on a single play, they look at me like I'm nuts, because they've never seen that.
Right.
But when you begin playing competitively and you can see beyond the 3-letter words on your rack, it puts you in a whole new world.
So you have a philosophy, and I've just recently, in the last year or so, have developed this philosophy that it's not about what we see as our failures that get us to that positive place in life. So every Tuesday when you were going, and maybe somebody would have felt they were failing every Tuesday night because they were losing a game, you saw it as, I'm learning something new, and each week I'm going to get closer and closer and closer so I can eventually win.
That's exactly right. And I want to say that it's a very difficult thing to do. I was able to do it with Scrabble. I was able to do it in other parts of my life. I played one man every Tuesday night for 6 years. Lesser players than myself had beat him. Time here once, there once. I never beat him. And then finally, I was in a position to beat him one night. I was leading the game by 70 points. There were only a limited number of tiles in the bag. I played a word down the edge of the board for another 100 points. I played the word pacified, Pacified, and I thought I had won the game. I took the last remaining 3 tiles out of the bag and almost sat back grinning like a Cheshire cat. And he turned the board around so he could look at it. And he played a word that I had never known at the time. He played the word obviate, O-B-V-I-A-T-E. And where did he put it? He hooked the O on top of pacified and made opacified. And he went out. And I looked at him and I said, challenge. I was sure that one of those 2 words was a phony. And if I challenge him off the board, I'm going to win. I challenged him. His play earned him about 180 points because it hit a triple 2 ways.
Good afternoon, Heckman residents. Just a reminder, at 4 o'clock we will be doing the 50-50 raffle sale in both lobbies.
Hey folks, I'm sorry, there's something else going on in the background, and we'll get back to Gary in a second as soon as that goes off. So whatever you're hearing in the background, just like sort of ignore it, and hopefully they'll be quiet in a second or 2. Okay. All right, sorry about that, Gary. Don't know where that came from.
Life is full of surprises.
Yes, it is.
And the event that I was telling you about, that was a big surprise to me because I challenged. A word judge came over and looked at the 2 words, looked it up in the official dictionary, and said acceptable. They were both acceptable words. Later on, I learned that opacified means opaque. And I don't remember exactly what the other word means, but I did plant it in my memory, and since that time, many years ago, I've been able to play obviate, O-B-V-I-A-T-E, because when you're playing competitive Scrabble, you make a concerted effort to learn things that are brand new to you and that startle you. And those kind of words where I've lost a challenge, I can remember them and recite them going back 20 years because it made that much of an impact in the game.
That is exciting. Well, right now we're going to take a little break from Gary, and I'm going to tell you about one of my, they're not really considered a sponsor, but they are a supporter of my I'm Possible Dream. And they are a great store in the state of New York. It is the Alpine Sports Shop. And they are closed for the season right now, but I want you to know about all the wonderful things that they have up there. They're in Saratoga Springs, New York, and they have a wonderful clothing line for winter sports, obviously skiing. They also do a lot of ski bus trips in the wintertime, and this past winter with all the snow that we've had, they were taking lots of different ski trips. The clothing line they have is terrific. In fact, last year I got a wonderful fleece jacket, and I have to thank Terry Lynn for showing it off to me and convincing me that it was the perfect jacket for me. Saratoga Ski Shop has been open since 1941. They are located at 399 Clinton Street in Saratoga Springs, New York. And again, they are closed for the season, but they will open up again in August, and we look forward to their continued support for my I'm Possible Dream. Okay, so Gary and I are going to talk more about Scrabble and words. I remember growing up, we would play Scrabble, and even once you got started in your love for the Scrabble clubs, you would challenge us all to Scrabble games, and you're real good at putting down words on the board that we as your family and friends sometimes really think are real because you're such a good bluffer. Is that normal in Scrabble?
Well, it's allowable. It's not wrong. It's not unethical because a part of the game, besides learning the words that you've studied, and there is study that's involved with becoming a good Scrabble player, it's knowing whether the words your opponent plays are real or not. So I don't go out of my way to play something that I know is phony. But I will go out of my way to play something that's very strange. For instance, there's a whole group of words that do not have a vowel.
Really? Words without a vowel?
Yep. The only qualification to play the word in competitive Scrabble is that it exists in the Scrabble official dictionary. Now, if you haven't looked in that dictionary or studied the dictionary, you would never know that some of these words exist unless someone like me plays it against you, and I bet you remember it after that day. Like take the short word CWM.
CWM.
I mean, how do you even say that?
Quim?
I believe the pronunciation is cum.
Cum.
It's a Welsh word, but it's in the English official Scrabble dictionary. And I bet that if you played on Word with Friends, CWM, most people would challenge you.
And knowing on Words with Friends, they probably wouldn't accept it because they don't accept everything in the Scrabble dictionary, which is sort of strange.
That's true. When you're playing a game, be it Scrabble or something else, you have to really understand the rules, and with word games, understand the dictionary in use, because no two dictionaries are identical.
So give me another word that would be similar to that.
Well, this is another Welsh word. It's CRWTH. Cruth is the word, and I believe it's an ancient stringed instrument.
Absolutely right. I just Googled it while you were spelling it.
Okay.
Interesting.
Then, a lot of times when you've played Words with Friends or Scrabble, you get one of those racks where you have all of those vowels on your rack. And most people, what they do when they get all those vowels, they might play off two-letter word, or they might trade in their letters. But there are a whole slew of words, 5 letters long with 4 vowels, 8 letters long with 5 vowels. I took a road trip to play in a Scrabble tournament I was still a novice at the time. The other 3 guys in the car were all expert players. And this might sound totally boring, and it sort of was, but from Detroit to Cincinnati, which was about a 5-hour ride, the discussion in the car was about 8-letter words that end with EAU.
EAU. Okay.
And I learned 3 of them on that day. One is Abwado, ABOITEAU.
Okay.
And one is Abwado, ABOIDEAU. And one is Vermouleau, VERMULEAU. Now, don't ask me what they mean.
And I'm not going to even look them all up.
What I learned once I made the decision, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I'm going to spend my time doing. I used some of my knowledge from having been a teacher before, and one of the ways that I was successful in helping the kids in my classes learn things was by making flashcards. And so I began making sets of Scrabble flashcards, each set dedicated to some letter combination. So for instance, I might have a whole deck of cards of words that end with EAU. Even though I told you 3 8-letter words,
right.
There are a bunch of 7-letter words and 6-letter words that end in EAU. And in the Scrabble dictionary, EAU by itself is acceptable.
Okay.
Then I made a whole variety of different lists. Like, for instance, I made a list called the dog list. Now, you would think that the dog list would be a list of the names of breeds of dogs. Well, you could go ahead and make that list, but I was more interested in the words, how they were formatted. So I made a long list of all the words in the dictionary that start with DOG.
Oh, okay.
So you might find a word like dogma on that list. And you might find a word like dogfish on that list. Then I made a list of words that ended with the letters DOG.
Like hot dog.
Like hot dog.
Okay.
So from there, it just branched out in all directions. Now, because I wanted to gain something financially out of this, I started creating these sets of words and making them available selling my word lists and selling my flashcards. And all of a sudden, out of nothing, I had an instant business. And I've sold flashcards to people across the country, around the world. And since the internet has become so popular everywhere, I now sell a lot of the lists in terms of files. I'll create the files, and I have no control if you buy a file, if you
Right.
share it with 10,000 of your
Sure.
friends. But I do generate some income for myself, and I'm busy doing an activity that I like. That's one of the keys to be successful.
Right.
Find something you love doing, and then things will pop up, ways will pop up for you on how to use it to your advantage.
Absolutely. So I know when you were in Michigan, you had a Scrabble club here. You moved out to California. You had to start all over again. What was that like?
Well, moving to California was pretty scary. It was scary because I had spent my whole life in Michigan. I had taken a few 5-day or 1-week trips out to the West Coast, and my brother was living in LA at the time, so I knew one person, but I had been active in the Scrabble world for some time, and I met a large number of those 20,000 people because I attended tournaments, and people would come to visit in the Detroit area and would come to my clubs. I felt confident that I would be able to walk in the door, and there are already a whole bunch of clubs out in California, and that's exactly what I found. Before I made my first stop at my brother's house, I drove in and I called a couple people who I had met the year before at a tournament in Reno, Nevada, and they said, "Come on by, we're playing right now." And so I went there and I met the hostess, and I met 4 other people who I hadn't known. And then those people, "Come with me to my club, come with me to my club." And there were as many as 10 different Scrabble clubs playing on different days within a 25-mile radius. And I wasn't working at the time, and I had these cards to sell. So I packed up my car and I took my wares, and I went with the intention of meeting new people, playing a game that I love, and possibly creating a brand new market for myself. And then a year after that, after I felt like I was going to stay here, I began looking for a place, and then started one club, then a second, and at one point I had as many as 4 clubs operating on different days.
So I'm hoping what people are hearing is that it starts with doing something that you like, not being afraid of failing, because there is no such thing as failing. It's learning from not doing the correct thing, because we're all going to make mistakes. So learn from your mistakes, get better at something because you want to get better at it, and go with it. And your success, as you're pointing out, isn't necessarily in the dollars, although dollars are good, but your success is in doing what you like to do.
That's right. Yeah. You know, it's been said by many motivational speakers, feel the fear and do it anyways. Fight through the fear. If you stop every time you become afraid, or if you stop every time because you're questioning yourself, you never get anywhere. You never make that first step. And I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. If I have 30 people walk into my clubs with the idea they're going to test the water and see if this is something they want, I can guarantee you that 29 out of 30 will come in we'll meet some nice people, but they'll say this is not for me and walk away. I'm always surprised when I find somebody who is a lot like I was. They don't show up very often, but I have this one lady. She was born in the Philippines. She met in college. She met and married a man from Pakistan. They started a business in the U.S., first in Texas, and then in Alaska, and now ended up in Southern California. They are Muslim. In the Muslim tradition, the husband keeps close tabs on his wife. The husband visited my clubs, and I was running tournaments at the time. He came by himself to check us out. Is this a place he would want his wife to be? When he felt comfortable with us, he brought his wife, who he told us she loved Scrabble. She told us further that she played Scrabble with the nuns in the Philippines as a means of learning her first English. English was her second language. She was determined to learn English, expand her knowledge of English through playing Scrabble. She lost game after game after game, week after week, and she was repeating my story, except I didn't have this English second language challenge. So I could see how difficult it was for her. It probably took her 3-4 times longer than it took me. She was still hanging out with us and losing 2 years later. Today, she is incredible. It's now about 12 years later from her start.
Okay.
She's not the best Scrabble player, but her English vocabulary has multiplied 100 times. She became so interested in English and in words, and she got interested in long words. And some of you may have noticed in the game stories on the shelf, there's a game called Super Scrabble.
Yes.
Super Scrabble board is twice as wide and twice as long as a regular Scrabble board. Instead of 100 tiles, has 200 tiles in the bag, and gives you the opportunity of playing long words. Well, my friend and student, Maliha is her name, she decided that she wanted to devote her time to long words. She took all the world dictionaries along with her computer, and she has combined her own long words dictionary with words up to as long as 30 letters.
Oh my gosh, I never thought of a word in 30 letters.
Yeah, I don't know what most of those are, but a lot of words, take successful, successfulness, successfulnesses, that sort of thing. By adding on, she created the very first Super Scrabble Club in the country. And she went and made a presentation to the existing Scrabble associations. They opened their arms to her. And she's the first and only certified Super Scrabble Club in the world. She hosts every other Thursday in her own home. She has drummed up the interest and invites local Scrabble players, but you don't even have to be a Scrabble player to come to her house to play Super Scrabble. And it's a totally different experience, but you're using some of the same strategies.
Sure.
And her dictionary is now 2 volumes, probably about 4,000 pages long. And this is someone who originally didn't even speak English.
You know, it's amazing because so many of us don't realize what we can be successful at. You know, I've talked about it on my show numerous times that growing up, I remember our parents saying to us, you know, that we should all, you know, go to college, we should all get married, we should all, you know, have good lives. But our mom and dad didn't necessarily, you know, give us that direction, what we should be good at. I just knew that I was supposed to go to college to get my MRS. And for those of you who don't know what an MRS is, that meant I was supposed to go get married, which I did. But when I went to college and I was working on my degree, I just kept hearing from the people around me, what good is a communications degree? Yeah, you're never going to be on TV. You're never going to be on radio. You're never going to be writing articles. And it took me most of my life to get to being on the radio and writing articles and having enough confidence in what I can do. And I've seen that also in you with Scrabble. It's not just the Scrabble, it's the connection that the Scrabble gives you. And that's what I want people to understand, that it may not be Scrabble that's making you, Gary Moss, this vibrant person that you are, but it gives you the vehicle to meet people, to do what you want to do with your life. And I know you're meeting some phenomenal people, and some of the people besides this one woman that you talk about who didn't know English, her husband had to come and approve that she could come to you. What is the average person like who comes to a Scrabble club?
Well, there isn't any average. I've had players as young as 6 years old.
Really?
Cooper was the young boy's name, Cooper Kupamazzo. And just last night, which was a Thursday, was the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Cooper was one of the finalists. He's now 14.
Oh, how wonderful.
People don't understand when you say, oh, I have this good friend, he's 6 years old.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I have two ladies that play in my club. And when I say play, I'm talking about competitive players that are 93 years old. 93. Can you imagine? You know, a lot of people retire and they hang things up. I meet a lot of people who are seniors because I live in a senior community. I happen to live in a very active senior community, but there are still, I don't know what the percentage is of those people who come and put their heels up on the couch,
sure,
and turn on the TV, and that's what life is. You know, you're going to ride out the end. But at the same time, I just get so excited and turned on by these people who all of a sudden have the time and the energy to really investigate some project. I see people who are now writers who never had the time because they were too busy doing their job, always wanted Absolutely. To be writers.
Right.
Now, they could have probably done this earlier, but there was a lot more risk because they had families and they had to feed them and provide all the things that you need to live. So it's never simple to follow your dream, but it's all, the door is there. All you have to do is walk through it. And you don't know, maybe you're going to be successful your first time, maybe you're going to have to try 100 times. We've all read about Dr. Seuss and other people who failed time and again, and the 100th time made it. And then there's a lot of these people who didn't have the courage to do it earlier, but when it became time and they had the opportunity, they really jumped into it. There's some of those folks that I've met who finally jumped into it only to discover I really don't like doing that.
Right, exactly.
I've been pining my whole life to be able to do something. Now the opportunity's here. I don't like it. But most of those people that I know turned a different direction and found something
else that they
really wanted to do.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a little break from Scrabble, and I'm going to talk to you real quickly here about something that is coming up very shortly, and that is the Autism Walk. And it's interesting when we talk about possibilities and opportunities and dreams. It's not just for what we call traditional people, it's for everybody. And if you know of somebody who's on the autism spectrum, that means 1 out of 68 that will be diagnosed this year. They're just like you and me and everybody else, and they have dreams and hopes as well. And it's up to us to become aware of what autism is, how we can support it. My I'm Possible Dream started out as an initiative to bring out awareness and support. Impossible means I'm possible. And as Gary was talking about, whether you're a 6-year-old who, has a dream of knowing words and playing Scrabble and getting better and better at it, or you're 93 years old and you don't want to, put your feet up on the couch and just pine away watching some terrible TV program, get out there and do something, whether it be Scrabble or line dancing or whatever it is. Let's become aware of what we all need, and let's become aware of autism. Autism Speaks. The walk is coming up August 23rd in Cleveland, Ohio. There are other walks across the nation as well. The one on August 23rd in Cleveland, the one and only Alex Hale will be performing, and he's got some new songs this year, so we hope that you will join us. So, as we conclude this with my own brother, Gary Moss here, who's in Detroit. We were at a great event this morning. Our mother turned 95 this year. There was a big event for seniors here in the area, 95 and up. And there were 83 participants, and they came with their families and friends to celebrate. And it was interesting, at least for me, to see how many are so active and involved. Now, I know our mother doesn't play Scrabble, but she does play Uno. She cheats too, but we're not going to go into that. But what are your recommendations or do you have any recommendations, because you live in a senior citizens area and you say it's a very active. If people want to get involved, how do we encourage them, especially if they're hesitant about walking in the door?
Well, if you're specifically interested in a Scrabble experience, you're always welcome to come to my website, which is justforthespellofit.com. Instead of the word for, it's the number 4. justforthespellofit.com. And on my website, you'll see the rules, you'll see some of those strange word lists, and you'll see a contact where you can call me or write me an email, and I'll be happy to put you on the path. There are clubs in countries around the U.S. and all around the world. And besides having the club experience, you can play on your own, on your computer. Some people feel more comfortable beginning that way before they sit across from someone. But I do want to encourage you, if you want to get involved, jump in and do play against other people. There's a lot of things that you can do. When you were talking about Autism Speaks, it reminded me that at one point I used the tournaments that I ran to raise funds for different organizations. And on a couple occasions, we funded Autism Speaks. But if you have a special charity, we funded the blind, we funded firefighters in the California wildfires. We funded, just breast cancer. And you can take whatever it is you're doing and you can do some kind of a charitable thing with whatever your idea is.
I mean, what we're talking about today is making something positive out of your life every single day. And you can. And you don't have to do it alone. There are opportunities out there. I know how difficult it is to walk into a room for the first time alone. And the best way to do this is, when you find that club, call ahead of time. Let them know that you're coming. Maybe let them know what color shirt or blouse you're going to be wearing so that when you walk in the door, you can be greeted and they'll know exactly who you are. I know I went to one of Gary's clubs, a number of years ago when I was out in California, and I played and I lost every single game, but I met some wonderful people and it was a fun evening. I didn't go there to win. I went there to socialize. So for some of the players, I wasn't a very good competitor for them, but for me, it was just a nice evening. So my suggestion to everybody is do what you love to do, and if you think it's what you love to do and you find out you don't like it, then find something else, because life is too short. With that, I'm going to thank my brother for being on the radio with me today. Now I have an excuse to come out to California and interview him and some of his club members. Just have to find a sponsor to get me out to California. So if any of you are listening, we need sponsors for the radio show. And for my I'm Possible Dream, this is Karen, and I want to thank you for listening. Have a great day.